Hi, everybody, and welcome. We're going to wait just a few more minutes for people to join, and then we'll start. It's just about a little before 6:30 now. So for those that are on, welcome to Tilden Preparatory's October open house, the second of the sessions for the October month, and hopefully more people will be joining and we'll get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. It's a small group right now, which is nice. It allows a lot of time for discussion about the program, and I'm guessing more people will join in. It's an interesting time around dinner time, so thank you for making this time to be with us tonight. So I'll start off. My name is Rebecca Hawley. I am the Director of Special Education and Admissions and the former head of school at Walnut Creek Campus. I came to Tilden first actually as a parent. My daughter is now 21 and was diagnosed at age 6 with pretty severe form of dyslexia and auditory processing disorder. And through high school, she did what we call a co-concurrent enrollment with her homeschool, Oakland School of the Arts in Tilden. She was an artist and that worked really well for her, but she needed really specific support, especially around math and the sciences. I happened to be in this field in special education, youth and child development, started doing my own research and found Tilden, and I'm still here. I wanted to talk just a little bit about Tilden and its founding story. Tilden was actually founded by two child psychologists, really looking at the need for an alternative form of education, seeing a lot of kids that were in schools and or private schools really falling through the cracks, that they had absolute capacity to excel, but the way the curriculum was being delivered, maybe the broad scope of the program, the actual numbers of students in a given class was difficult and kids were getting lost in the shuffle. So Tilden was really founded as a way to look at each child's strengths and look at the challenges that they may be facing and form a real tailored, individualized approach to learning using what we'll call a mastery of learning model. And Malcolm will explain a little more about that in a minute. To meet kids where they're at while also helping them get up to speed if there's areas that are a little bit more difficult for them. So it was really founded that every child can learn, every student can learn. They just may need a different approach to really excel to their potential, looking at their strengths will also take into account what they need academically to thrive and a little bit of intervention. We also, in terms of Tilden, and we continue with the founding, with the mission and the founding story, is to really look at kids' social emotional needs and understanding that they may be coming from other schools that weren't the most successful or didn't meet their learning needs, and really creating a warm, safe environment with both peers and with staff to welcome students into that and support them and help them in that social emotional aspect of learning, both in their peer group, as a young adult coming of age, and interaction with other adults as well. So that is our founding story. I'm going to talk a little bit more after Malcolm introduces and speaks to the mastery of learning model and kind of a day in the life of Tilden, what that looks like for a student. And I will come back and kind of put on my role, my hat as special education director, and speak a little bit about accommodations and how we support students that have learning differences and or have some school anxiety, mental health challenges, combination of all or none, and how we also just really support typically developing students who need a different style of learning so they can excel at their own pace. So I'm going to turn over to Malcolm. Malcolm is the Associate Head of School at the Walnut Creek campus. And one reminder before I do that, just please keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking. If you have questions as we go along, please feel free to put them in the chat box because we will address them, and we'll have ample time just for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So thank you. Malcolm, it's all you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So my name is Malcolm. I'm the Associate Head of School here in Walnut Creek. We're located 1475 North Broadway. And at our campus, we have about 47 full-time, 45 part-time students. We also have some middle schoolers, around 10 middle schoolers at our campus. We've got both full-time and part-time students that are here for classes as well as tutoring. And we hope here to sort of instill really great learner outcomes for our students. So we want to create confident learners. We want students that are, confident in using technology responsibly. We want self-directed learners, and we want students that, advocate for themselves when they don't understand something. So they become active participants in their learning. And the one-on-one environment really allows us to do this more so, and especially with our mastery learning model. We believe we have a growth mindset towards our students. It's an approach that's strength-based, and we offer students multiple ways to demonstrate understanding because we know there are multiple intelligences as well. And in our mastery learning model, students are able to demonstrate to pass the class at least an 80% understanding in assessments of the material. And what our model allows is, unlike other environments, first of all, we've got the one-to-one, where students are given feedback much earlier. It's not like the evening before the next class, they're doing homework and then they're like, oh, I don't understand this concept. The feedback is more immediate, so we can assess and look for areas where there are gaps in knowledge. And that's something unique that we can offer in a one-to-one environment as well. Also in the mastery model, we meet students where they are. So a student coming in with, say, anxiety around math, for instance, right? We can assess, we can support them, figure out where their gaps are, and we can pace the courses accordingly, taking into account, again, learning style as well. And we have a lot of flexibility. We can create curriculum to support a student. If a student is having challenges, we can have meetings, and we've got department heads, and of course we have great support from Dr. Holly as well to assess the student and put a plan into place to support them. And I look forward to any questions that you may have. You could also place them in the chat as we go forward. Thank you.
And on that segue, I wanted to talk about also the Albany campus. Both campuses are very similar in terms of our pedagogy and our approach to teaching and learning. And we have about the same number of students on each campus. And we have what we call full-time students, where Tilden is their school of record. So that is their home school that they would be graduating from, either from middle school or for high school. And then we have what's called the Concurrent enrollment plan. And that's for students that maybe are taking one or two classes, such as my daughter did through high school with Tilden, but their school of record is in a different location where they're actually graduating from. And we're supplementing or providing that extra support for courses that either they want to advance in that they weren't offered there, or they weren't able to access fully because of a learning difference and they needed approached in a different way. So we have two levels of enrollment. We are in person, we're primarily in person, and encourage people to come in person right now that we can, especially after COVID and being sheltered in place for 18 months and really seeing the impact that has taken on youth and adults as well. But we're continuing the remote option for families that need it because of commute, logistics, or for students that maybe aren't quite ready to transition back yet onto campus and are working up to that. And then we also have a flex program where some classes can be at home and some classes can be in person at one of our campuses. So it's very diverse in terms of how we individualize the program for you. For full-time students, though, we really do encourage that if a student's able to come, that they do. There's a lot of really rich social opportunities that happen with the teachers, with the staff, with myself, the heads of school, and peers. We have lunchtime clubs that happen each day that are no charge, where kids can come around like interests and hang out, but there's adult facilitation. We have events that happen throughout the year on campus, like Spirit Week. We have Halloween events coming up at each campus. We just had a cross-campus picnic where we all came together in Tilden Park. And we have leadership clubs for students that really want to take a little bit more of a hands-on approach, not just around their education, but being mentored to other kids and looking at what's happening within the Tilden environment and advising maybe some of the younger students, the middle school students, the incoming freshmen or young sophomores, and also create activities that we do on campus as a community. So there's a lot of ways, really rich ways to become involved because we're one-on-one. We really also value the social aspect and keeping that for our students alive daily with adult support, knowing that these times can be difficult during the adolescent years. But in terms of the two campuses, we're very, very similar. Usually people choose a campus based on location and commute factors as well. But I do encourage you, if you're not sure which campus you're leaning towards, to visit both. We're doing on-campus visiting right now, so you're always open to come and take your student or come first by yourself with family members and just tour the school. So I saw one question that came in. I'm just going to approach that real quick. What is the graduation rate for full-time students? How does the concurrent enrollment work towards college admission? Who monitors the A to G requirements for universities and colleges in and out of state? Really good question. We have pretty much 100% graduation rate for all of our students that are full-time with us. And for the most part, that's not on what we called a modified track. That is for students that want to keep the door open for the A to G requirements for a four-year college, even if they decide to take a gap year or go into a two-year community college base first with the idea of transferring. So we have a very high graduation rate. We're able to really individualize that plan to support that student to meet not only the graduation requirements within Tilden, but the A to G requirements both within state and out of state. For students that are with us full-time, as they become juniors, we really start having those conversations with the parents and with the student around what the next two-year transition plan might look like for them. And in the early fall of the senior year, we have what we call senior packet weeks, where we send out packets for the seniors and for their parents, and then have a sit-down meeting with us to really almost backward plan around what the steps are for that application process, if college counselors are needed, making those referrals and tracking what is needed in terms of not just the graduation requirements, but the A to G requirements as well. And we're doing that from the time a student comes in our door in ninth grade. They may not know that, but on the back end, we're really looking at that in terms of advising them through what courses they need. Every year, before you move on to the next grade level, we have parent meetings to discuss the course selection, and we really also want the student's voice in that. So they're aware of the process and can also advocate for courses they want to take, what they feel is working, what they may be hesitant about, or may need more support with. In terms of the part-time enrollment, we don't track that. That really is for the homeschool to track. What we do is work really closely with you to make sure that you're in communication with the homeschool of record and that they're allowing you to take that course if it's a graduation requirement for their graduation requirements so they can put it back on their homeschool transcript. So that's what we do in terms of the concurrent enrollment, where a student may be just taking 1 or 2 classes with us. And if needed, we have conversations with the counselor at the school and that active communication. I'm going to pass this one over to Malcolm, and then I'm going to segue into some of the accommodations for students that have learning differences. And this is to everyone. Can you walk us through what a student's day might look like at Tilden?
I think is there another question before? If a student is progressing and mastering their grade level?
You're right.
Are they encouraged to move to the next level? Yes. After the initial assessment is taken, we check for gaps in knowledge. But what we can do is, normally a class will take around 30 sessions to complete. AP classes take longer. But if a student is able to master the material, we can move them on to the next level right after that. Yeah, students are encouraged if they master the material to move on to the next level, definitely. So the second question, can you walk us through what a student's day looks like? So our classes start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and not all students want to be there at 8. So we also have classes that go and end at 5:45. The sessions are 50 minutes long, and there's a 10-minute passing period. We have lunch at 12 o'clock, 12 to 12:45. And during this time of COVID, we're taking students across the street so they get to have lunch in the park, which has worked out really great together. We've got a full art studio on campus. We've got a full lab. If students are taking any of those classes, they have access to all of those tools and resources. Every day of the week, we have a student club. We've got a leadership club. We've got, of course, a gaming club. It's part of it. We've got a maker club where students work on electronic projects. And we have a music club as well that meets. And we've been given a space across the street, which is really great which is actually a performance space, and we meet there. And we've got student musicians that come in and play instruments. They sort of jam together. But it's a very rich environment. It's also very collaborative. We've got a great group of students, a very welcoming community. We have students that join us that they come for many reasons. Some students they've got a lot of extracurriculars. We have students sometimes that have anxieties around being in larger environments, and they feel comfortable with us. We have students that, may be in an environment and not really engaged, and they want much more rigor in their curriculum, and they're part of the community as well. And I encourage you to come out and visit the school. We'd love to have you.
And to build on that a little bit more, we're on a block schedule. So day to day, this schedule might look a little bit different. For the most part, as Malcolm was saying, students start at 8 or 9. We have some students that don't start till 10, or some students that actually start after lunch because they have other commitments in the morning. So again, that's very individualized. In terms of the classes, for the most part, we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday, students are engaged in their math class, English class, foreign language, and if they're taking any electives that may fall on those days, that's individual electives or small group electives. And then we have what's called study hall. And study hall is a really protected time if parents and students want, that is built in between classes so they can work on homework when it's still fresh in their mind.
So study halls are great because they're one of the few times where we ask students to check in their phones and to solely just work on the homework that they have. The study hall proctor has access to all the homework the student is due. So we could really sort of monitor that period and dedicate it just to studying, completing homework before the next day as well.
And
Go ahead,
with that also, parents have access to the progress notes in any class, including study hall. So you get to go into the portal and really see what was happening during the day, including how the student's affect was, what was working, what wasn't working, aha moments, what's coming down the pike in terms of testing and assessments, what the homework is. And as Malcolm was saying, the study hall teachers have access to that as well. So they're really able to scaffold students through prioritizing what may be needed in terms of homework. Along with that, we have two steps further. One is called study support, which is more what I call kind of really intentional tutoring around certain subjects where kids may still be struggling, where they're meeting with a teacher for study support around a certain subject or two to work on homework with that teacher during the day and study skills with that teacher. The third step for some students that may struggle with executive functioning is our executive functioning skill development class. That is one-on-one, and it's looking at the homework, looking at also outside activities that the student is involved with, looking at issues like gaming, phone time, monitoring, computer time, and really helping them to gain those skills in terms of prioritizing, outline, completion, and cross-checking what needs to happen. So those both study skills and the executive functioning support, both at home and at school, are topics that are discussed both with short-term goals and also long-term goals. So for many of our students that have identified learning differences, that's a huge support. And it's done in a way that's not punitive. It's done in a way that's very just, I'm working with you to really figure out how to do this together. So it becomes more like a mentoring model with that teacher, but on the back end, again, that teacher is trained and really using a lot of executive functioning skill development tools based on peer-based research around what we know really works specifically with the middle school and high school college transitional age group. In terms of the classes, all of our classes that are the core academics are one-on-one. We have small group electives that are not, and we have a painting and drawing class, a digital photography class. We will probably start up a social skills class again. And we had, before COVID, a Model UN that was somewhat put on hold across the board when kids weren't traveling and competing for that. So that course has been put on hold. We're really eager for it to come back because it's a really neat one. And those are all small group classes. Occasionally, we might group 2 or 3 students together by parent-family request if they really feel that they want their students to be in a small group environment and they know that their students are at a similar level of learning. But we really want to make sure that their learning style is compatible, so 1 or 2 students aren't flying forward, leaving someone behind, or vice versa. So in a nutshell, for the most part, we are one-on-one, but there's many opportunities for electives and at times by parent kind of design for a 2 to 3 student session. However, I do want to say if we start that 2 or 3 group session, we see that it's really not working because of their learning styles, we may come in and say, you know what, this isn't working so much. We might want to think about dividing this class up as well. I see another question that just came in. What do classes look like? Math or language? How many students are there? What is the one-on-one instruction component? And do the students interact at all during classes? So I think I just somewhat answered that in my last response. In terms of interaction though, during the 10-minute passing period, during the 20-minute breaks and lunchtime, like any other small school, we have a real small school buzz where it usually takes the head of school or myself to walk around and remind kids social time's over, time to get to class. So you will feel that in the small group environment along in the small group electives as well. Just look at one more. Okay, so I want to segue a little bit just to talk about students that have identified learning differences and are coming from schools where they may have an IEP or a 504 in place, or potentially other private schools where there hasn't been a 504 IEP, but there's a neuropsych evaluation with a diagnosis of a learning difference. What we do really at the start is discuss with you if you're interested in sharing that information. That's helpful for us to see what has been done before, to really get an understanding of the student's learning profile, accommodations that have been put in place, accommodations that worked or didn't work, accommodations that families feel would have been needed. And we talk about that as a team between the heads of school, myself, and the parent, family, or any other specialist that may be involved with that student's life, around how that's going to transfer to Tilden and what that's going to look like in the one-on-one setting. So teachers are really aware of how that student learns, what they need, and accommodations and approaches to both the teaching, but also to the assessment process. Along with that, if students are still receiving any services from the school district, or that is an active partnership, we have a lot of support on site where we take part, if parents want, in those IEP meetings, in the 504 annual planning meetings, in the triannual meetings, and any other information that the family feels that they would like Tilden to provide to that school in partnership with them. So there's a lot of support in place with that. Prior to those meetings, if that's something that a family wants, we'll have an initial meeting with Tilden to really talk about what are the goals? What are the family goals? What are the student goals for this upcoming meeting? And how can we work in partnership, both with our partnership with you and Tilden, but also the school district? And that is true too, that kids that do not have an IEP or 504, but maybe working with educational psychologists, other specialists outside of Tilden as a wraparound support service in terms of supporting the Tilden placement as well. For standardized tests like the ACT and the SAT, we also provide a lot of support to families for applying for those accommodations. It can be a tricky process and not always straightforward. So we have in-house support, so that actually takes the pressure off the families to have to navigate that. And we apply for those on behalf of the student if they're full-time with us. And of course, prior to that, we have a conversation with you around what do we think are the necessary accommodations? What do we want to ask? So there's a lot of support in place for that. All of our teachers, when we hire teachers, first and foremost, yes, we're looking for teachers that have content expertise in the areas that they're teaching, but we're also really looking at teachers that understand learning differences, that are understanding of kids who may be twice exceptional, that have diagnosed learning differences, that may be coming from situations where they don't have any diagnosed learning differences, but the school environment was really difficult for them socially, that teachers can make that connection on a one-to-one basis and also collaborate with other teachers around holding that student and sharing information to really, again, tailor. It's almost like a small school around that specific student as well. Another question that just came in. Let's see. Transitioning from Tilden Prep to a college or university that does not cater to the student, how is the student acclimated to a different teaching style? And what is Tilden's college graduation rate? Malcolm, do you want to answer that? And I'll jump in just from my experience of seeing this happen kind of in your.
I think the important part here is, there are the schools that do what we do, but the component we offer also here is the rigor in our curriculum that aligns with what the UCs are looking for and what colleges are looking for. We're able to offer this rigorous curriculum so that in the past we've had students that have, say, taken the first semester of a math class with us, and then went back to their high schools, and they were easily able to make those transitions. It's just that the alignments that we have in curriculum allow us to do this. The other thing is that with learning sort of the skills to study, the executive functioning skills that we offer students, that we are already built in, teachers work with students, they can apply these skills outside of Tilden to the next high school if they're returning to high school, or even at the college level. So they not only develop skills around the content they're learning, they learn how to learn from Tilden, and that can be passed on. And these are lifelong skills that they develop with us. And the different learning styles, the different teaching styles. Students here are taught to advocate for themselves. So when they're able to do that, if they go into other environments, they can seek out resources to do that, whether it's, the writing center at their college or any other resources they need access to. They'll know how to find those resources to support themselves.
Yeah, and the majority of our students who go on to either 2-year or 4-year graduate, and it's neat because they stay in contact with us. And we have a lot of students, that state that when they got there, although they were in the one-on-one setting, they were so comfortable in talking to professors, teachers, and really understanding their modality of learning, where they could easily go up and take advantage of office hours, take advantage of different seminars where their voices could be heard around what's working, what's not working, and navigate the system in a way that many kids who didn't have that type of mentorship or interaction can do. So it's been pretty neat just seeing kind of kids go off, graduate, come back. We actually have a teacher right now that we just hired who's a Tilden graduate who went to college, came back, and is now teaching for us. And just hearing his stories around that process of being a full-time Tilden student, going off to college and coming back as a teacher at this point in his young adult life has been pretty special. But the majority of our kids, when they're ready to go to college, they do, and they really have the tools that are set up. The one thing that we talk about in terms of that college transition, specifically for kids who may need more support, is really understanding how to access those resources in college and what that college transition looks like in terms of student support services and gaining access to what in college would be a 504 plan under the American with Disabilities Act. For kids that had an IEP in college, they don't do that, but they're still entitled to legal rights in terms of some accommodations. So we really start talking with students and also with families around what to ask for, what to look for when you're doing college tours. And we work very closely with several college counselors who are just deft and skilled in this area and know their stuff. We just had one actually last week, and they're free to the Tilden community and actually to any parent in the Bay Area that's interested in learning. They're by Zoom, and I'll post the announcements where you can see, we call it the Conversation Education Series. And we make sure that we have college counselors throughout the year to address these questions. But winding it back, most of our kids that go to either 2-year or 4-year graduate from college, and many go on kind of post-undergrad to master's, doctorate programs, etc. And I'm going to just take a moment. If you have questions, feel free to ask them right now or post them in the chat. And I'm going to post the Conversation and Education series, which also has hot links to the registration. So if you're interested, you can register. And Malcolm, as we're doing this, do you want to talk a little bit about our testing policy and how we do assessments? Because it's pretty different than the average school, either private or public.
Okay, so currently we're having students test at home, and we're having parents sort of proctor the tests. The information is also available on our website, and I can provide that link as well. And this is a bit different than, I guess, other schools at this time. But a student can also test at school, and that would be the class hour where they would test in.
And during this pre-COVID and hopefully coming back to a new normal, we have testing centers. So when a student feels that they're ready to take an exam and the teachers feel that they're ready, they go and they take the exam with the proctor in the testing center. Because of social distancing, and we're just being hyper vigilant right now in terms of safety protocol with COVID and the Delta variants, we're not having a lot of kids in the same space at the same time. When it's safe to do so, we'll open up the testing center. And with the tests also, as we talked about earlier, we use a mastery of learning model. So a student may feel that they're ready to take a test. The teacher may feel like, yep, you're ready to go. And they go and take that test and it doesn't work out for whatever reason, lack of sleep, they weren't prepared, maybe there was testing anxiety, whatever it may be. They're able to take that test back and look at what happened and really look at the material with their instructor of where it went wrong. And it's not the end of the world. They restudy the material, they look at testing techniques, and they're able to go back and take a like exam for a different grade. So it really takes a lot of the testing anxiety out for a lot of students, which is nice. I see another question, can you register mid-year? Yes, we are ongoing enrollment, so you can register at any time. We also have an intensive summer program that is specifically for parents and students that want to complete either a semester or a full course during the summer, either to redeem a course to make up a grade or to advance, maybe to lighten the load the next year, or just because of a course of interest that a student may want on their transcript that their homeschool doesn't offer, but anytime during the year, including summer.
And
Another question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. And we also offer transfer credit for if a partial semester was completed, some work may be able to transfer over if it's completed at a B average.
Thank you, Malcolm, for that. That's important to know. Two questions have come in, one privately and one public. What is the tuition? That's very varied because it really is almost a la carte for full-time and part-time for students. So if you're interested in really talking about what the annual tuition would be like for your student, I put my email in there. Feel free to contact me. We can set up an appointment to really tease through what you're looking for, be it part-time, be it full-time, with electives, with study hall, without, and go through that process and give you an average of what that might look like. In general, we're comparable to most private schools in the area, but because again, we're kind of either hybrid, full-time, part-time, electives, non-electives, it's a little bit different. So I would just encourage you, if you're interested in really trying to figure out what your student needs, what you're looking for, to make an appointment and we can talk that through. It's different for each family and each student. I see another question to everyone. How can kids attend a homeschool and Tilden at the same time? That's a really good question. We have many students actually throughout the years who their school of record has, quote, been their home school. So that's where their transcript is coming from. That's where they're graduating from. The parents have kind of control over that homeschool processes. If they're taking a few courses with us, like with any other school of record, they would want to get that passed through the homeschool of record that you're working with, the homeschool committee, and let them know you're interested in taking one or two classes, be it electives, be it for graduation requirements with us, so they're aware. And then you would be on what we would call the co-concurrent enrollment, where the homeschool would actually be the school of record that the child will graduate from, but we're supplementing with the classes that you're choosing to take with us. Another question that just came in, are there scholarships? We don't have a traditional scholarship program, but if there is a financial need, our associate director, whose name is Gail Alter, would be the person to contact, and I'll put her email in the chat box after I put mine as well. And what she will do is really walk through what the need is, may ask for some financial documents, and on a case-by-case basis, there can be a tuition reduction, but that's a conversation that you would want to start to have with the associate director of the school. That would be taken to the board and the co-chairs for a decision. Okay, I'm gonna just take a moment. And if anyone else wants to answer, also, I'll just open it up. We don't necessarily have to do chat, but I'm gonna take a moment to put my email to everyone and also Gail Alter's email in there. So if anyone has a question right now, it would be a great time to ask. Malcolm, do you want to just field the question box? Because I see some still coming in as I put this in.
I'm saying, does Tilden provide tuition online? If you could just clarify, we offer, our program both virtually and in person as well. There is no difference in tuition between the in-person and virtual program. I hope I answered that if you needed me to clarify. And another question, can kids attend homeschool in Tilden at the same time? Yeah, we actually have several students that are, taking just a class or two. We're not the school of record, but they're taking courses with us. And depending on the school district, some of our classes are accepted by, for example, I think it's the San Ramon School District will allow 4 classes to be completed outside of the district, and our courses are accepted and put on a transcript. Or, even at this time, I think it's pretty common for students to submit multiple transcripts when they're applying to colleges, because ever since COVID, students have been taking classes online, sometimes in, not even within the state, but out of state as well.
And bottom line, if you're thinking of doing concurrent enrollment, you always want to check with what we call the homeschool of record just to get it approved, so they're aware
Okay.
if you're wanting it for graduation requirements, be it middle school or high school, and not just as supplemental to show a school additional classes that a student has taken.
So I was just going to add, so for us to find out if our school qualifies, we would check with them first.
Correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
if you're thinking of having your homeschool still as the school of record and say taking 1 or 2 courses with us, you want to talk with the school counselor and or principal or vice principal or whoever you can get to, or a combination of people, and check that out for sure. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And while I'm off mute, if I could ask one more question, I jumped on a little late, so I apologize. Is there an option for, if I've got a child who's in a public school but struggling in, say, math or history, could I come to Tilden for some extra support and tutoring in those particular, is there a crossover with what she's learning in school with, how do I make that connection?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of students that just come to us for educational tutoring. We're really familiar with the surrounding districts, their requirements, their courses, their curriculum, and try to stay in alignment with it, not only just for tutoring, but we have students that transfer in between. So that's absolutely an option where they're not actually taking the course with us, but they're getting the educational support with us in support of that class.
Great. Thank you.
Another question that just came in, what percentage of your students tend to be full-time? So on each campus, we have about 50 students that are full-time. It usually goes up throughout the year because we're ongoing enrollment. It usually caps around 60 or so full-time students, 70 at the max in a given year, and that's between middle and high school. Middle school students, we cap it at 15, and we do that really purposely, knowing that that age cohort needs a lot of kind of hands-on around the social emotional, the peer development, the peer interaction and support, and the academics with that transition to high school. So we only take 15 6th through 8th graders, and then the majority of our students who are full-time are high school students. Again, at each campus right now, we have about 50 full-time high school students and about 80 to 100 part-time students that are doing what we call the concurrent enrollment at each campus. Another question I see, can you give a tuition range for full-time student? Again, that's really individualized depending on what courses a student is taking, and also in terms of the price per course, understanding that student's learning style, giving the approximate number of hours based on what we estimate, but gaining more information from you about your student as a learner. So again, I really encourage you, if you have those questions, email me and set up an appointment and we can walk that through. The heads of school can do that as well.
So what I hear you saying is that a student, let's say, that doesn't have any learning disabilities, that they're ready, you know, they're pretty much on track coming in, coming as a 9th grader, 10th grader, that can vary based on, so say my daughter, just as a rough guess, everything's fine, but she can come in and she can work through a class quickly. So you're saying because she can excel a little bit quicker than the other kid, it may be a little less because she took less on that one. But then she goes into the next course, it might take a little bit longer because she struggled a little bit. But okay, so that makes sense. But then again, so say if they struggle with a class, they don't, excuse me, I apologize, they don't get it in that excuse me, quarter. So are you on quarters or semesters or what?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I'm glad you brought that up. So let's say a student is really struggling and it's not an AP or honors course. If it's a regular course in high school, not honors or AP, we're going to estimate it's going to take about 30 to 35 hours. If we start to see, wow, this pacing, the student's really struggling to stay on pace. Every week we have what's called a pacing note where the teacher is putting in, are they on pace? Are they not on pace? Are they ahead of pace? So we can get everybody, the heads of school, the parents, myself, just a vibe for where they're at. And if we need to do intervention, let's say because they're struggling, let's look at why it's taking longer. Do we need to adjust the approach? Do we need to adjust the homework? Do we need to adjust how we're assessing the students so they can demonstrate to us their knowledge and mastery? So we start to have that conversation with the parents. And likewise, if the student is just breezing through, we're going to give a parent a head up. They're really grasping this and they're doing independent work. They're ready to move to the next level and they're probably going to end this semester quicker and roll right into the next semester with parent permission, if that's what you want to do.
Okay, and then the other question, I'm sorry. The other question is, so when you get to the AP and honors courses, how does that learn? Because you were saying if it was just a regular course, it seems like they can move faster, slower, and you can adjust. But when they get to an AP or honors, it's different. So what's the difference?
The difference is there's more hours that we estimate it might take, but it doesn't mean that they might finish it quicker or need more hours. So for honors, for example, let's say a math course, it's going to be between about 35 to 40 hours for an honors course. For an AP course per semester, it's going to be probably about 50 to 60 hours, depending on how that student learns, but they may finish it quicker. There's California state standards and state standards that we need to abide by before we move a student further. But if a student, let's say, is taking an AP course and finishing it in 25 hours and they've really mastered all the material, we move them on to the next semester.
And so you all monitor that?
The heads of school monitors that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We got a lot of hands-on, a lot of.
Yeah, the great thing is with our learning management system that you can log into, you'll look and you'll see the daily updates. You'll see the weekly progress reports. There won't be any surprises in it. You'd see when homework was completed, test scores, the student learning disposition, or even things that you'd want us to look out for that the teacher can look out for. We can report back in those narratives as well.
Yeah, and outside of just the student portal progress reporting system, we're very open door, very hands-on. The heads of school and myself are literally accessible all through the day via email, via phone call. If you have questions and feel that you need more of a narrative or more data that you're not getting, we encourage those calls. We want that communication with parent. We want the back and forth. We see this as a partnership with you. It's the village that's making it happen for this kid. So we really, really want to keep the doors open. And when we say we have an open door policy, we really do. Not just for the parents, but for the kids. At any given day, you can come to the school and see kind of kids or a parent coming to our office just to, now that we're back on campus, to speak with us. So we encourage that communication if there's ever questions about where a student is at.
Question, so you were on quarters or semesters?
Semester.
Okay.
I see another question that came in. Is the schedule timing for the virtual program the same as in person? Yes, it is. So we have each scheduled session is 50 minutes. We have a bell schedule that we adhere to. For parents that are wanting part-time, we would ask you, what are your most available times that work for your student? And then really try to schedule that class around the time with teacher availability. One thing that we want to do when any student walks through the door is really understand what works for that student with a teacher, what's worked well in the past, what hasn't gone well in the past, so we can really think about teacher match for that student. So the more information we can gain from you about the type of teacher, adult your student really matches with, times of day that you're available, the easier that we can schedule around that and make a right match of teacher. Is there homework given, or do they complete their daily homework on campus? Malcolm, do you want to speak to that?
Well, students can expect probably around 45 minutes of homework per class, generally. And the homework can be completed in study halls. If students need more direction, if we want to ensure sort of more accountability, there's somebody there to make sure the assignment is done. There's that is an option. If students are having challenges with completing the homework, we can revisit it, and sometimes a teacher can put aside a few minutes in class to help a student maybe complete a few problems as well.
And sometimes for some students, specifically students that have learning disabilities, less may be more. And if that 45-minute marker is too much, we're going to look at really what is the right amount in terms of context and content for that student. And it may be less than that, where we're working back up over time, but the less may be more in terms of the student's focus, cognitive fatigue, what they're able to demonstrate in that amount of time, and when they're just tapped out. We don't give busy work just to give busy work to say, okay, it's 45 minutes or hour, this is what we need to do. Again, it may be really different for each student, and maybe very different for each student depending on what class they're taking in terms of what their strengths are and what their challenges are as well. Another student question around particularly, if a student has an existing IEP, will they have an IEP document with Tilden? We're a private school. Only public schools have IEP documents. So if you were enrolled full-time with us and not receiving services from the district in terms of a formal IEP where that is their home school of record, they would not have an IEP. We don't generate IEPs. What we would do is look at what has occurred in the former assessment and IEPs and make sure that those accommodations and support needs, both on the academic and if there's the social emotional component, are in place. For some parents, they may want to do what's called a privately chosen private school and pick Tilden, but still want the support of the school district. They can do what's called an individual student placement, an ISP, which is worked out through the district, where the district isn't actually providing special education services, but they're consulting with us on an annual basis just to see where that student is at in the event that that student transitions back to public school. And it's just more of a public school to private school partnership under what's called the Child Find Services. That goes into a whole nother ballgame. If you're in that situation and have questions about it, feel free just to set up a meeting and I can kind of walk you through what that looks like and what the options are. For those of you that may have not seen it or seen it, I did put the discussion and conversation series up there, and I believe embedded in that is also a link to, we run twice a month parent support group for middle and high school parents that's facilitated peer-to-peer, of a time for parents just to come together to really discuss kind of the trials, the tribulations, the wins of students who have identified learning differences or who are twice exceptional or maybe struggling with some anxiety around school. They're open to any Tilden parent at no cost. And they're also open to the community, which is really nice because it's a mix of parents from Tilden and a mix of parents from the larger Bay Area community. And we share resources, we'll talk about specific topics, and it really just is a protected time for parents to kind of come together and discuss their kids in the context of education and learning differences. Just looking at the time, and we have time for about a few more questions if anybody has any.
Rebecca, I think there was a question in the chat, and I don't know if you answered it, and if so, I'm sorry if I missed it. The times for the tutoring, what are the tutoring schedule? What does that look like?
Yeah, anytime during the day between 8 and 4:35 to 5:45 is our last session. So what we would do is really look at when your student is available for tutoring. We don't do evenings or weekends, but anytime between the hours of about 8 and then 4:35 being the last session.
Thank you.
And I really encourage you, I keep saying this because we're open again and we can have people on campus, but if you have further interest and really just want to see what a day in the life of Tilden looks like, come to campus and visit. You really get, you kind of feel it, hear it, smell it, see it. It's a great way just to see, could this work for my family, for my student?
Oh, I asked a question earlier. I was wondering if you guys work with kids that's on the spectrum, but high functioning.
Yes, we do. We have many students around the spectrum, different levels on the spectrum that are high functioning. We do that really well. We have a lot of expertise with teachers in-house and myself around providing services to kids that are on the spectrum. And that's for both middle and high school.
Thanks. Also, the other question is for your summer program, is it more geared towards high school student or middle school student can attend to?
Both. It's both. We
Thank
usually
you.
have more high school students attending, but absolutely middle school students have. And we've had a lot of time middle school students that start in the summer knowing that they're going to transition in the fall, either for part-time or full-time, just a way to get used to kind of the Tilden one-on-one teaching model and familiar with the teachers, the environment, the classrooms. So for many students that need that kind of buffer in terms of the adjustment period, they might start in summer. And then that's kind of nice because it lightens the load for the next year if you want.
So that earlier you mentioned the middle school student ratio is really kind of really small compared to high school students. Do your middle school students ever feel like I don't know how to put this, like they're in the minority, or it's kind of scary having all the high schoolers around and it's just a few of them?
Not really, actually, no, because we have a very protected track for them at both campuses. We have special events and lunches. At each campus, we have a lunch area where usually the middle school students take over and it's kind of their area. Right now, it's the park at the Albany campus. It's downstairs outside of the student lounge. One of the faculty members is down there just helping to support that. And then we have very specific middle school classes, elective classes that are just for the middle school cohort. So that would be, the social skills development class, which will be starting again, and also the painting and drawing class as well. And then we've had middle school clubs that are specifically just towards middle school interests.
Thank you.
We've got about 1 minute left. I will stay on. So if there's any lingering questions, if other people get off, feel free just to kind of use me during this time. But if there's no other questions, I will end it here. And as I said, I'll just kind of hang out for a little while if there's individual questions.
Thank you, everyone. And please reach out if you have any more questions or if you'd like to schedule a campus visit. We'd love to have you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see, Nina, you're still on. Did you have any more questions that I could answer or Malcolm could answer? On that note, I think it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Malcolm.
Okay.
Bye.